Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. Welcome to Lux's webinar, It's Personal, the Next Big Focus in Food. My name is Andrew Stockwell. I lead Lux's research, consulting, product, and marketing teams, and I'll be your host today. Our speaker today is Thomas Hayes, Research Associate Extraordinaire. Tommy tracks technology, innovation, and market developments in the food, health, and wellness ecosystem, focusing very specifically on food and nutrition. I'll hand it over to Tommy in a couple minutes, but just in terms of housekeeping, if you do have a question during the course of the presentation for either Tommy or myself, please use the Q&A box on your screen to enter that question on the GoToMeeting platform. And at the end of the webinar, we will get to as many of them as possible in the time frame allotted. So before we do get started, a few words about the challenges we at Lux are seeing in food and nutrition or food, health, and wellness today, and how Lux is helping companies like yours drive innovation and growth. So overall, there's a number of challenges we're seeing. First, consumers are becoming increasingly interested in what their foods are made of, the processes used to make food products, and how what they consume will impact their health and wellness. Also, evolving consumer preferences like organic, local, and non-GMO are driving innovations all along the food chain. Finally, unsustainable healthcare costs, more demanding patient expectations, an evolving perception of wellness, and advances in digital technologies are rapidly creating market opportunities for new entrants while forcing incumbents to develop new solutions or alternative revenue streams. On top of all of this, elusive innovation is increasingly coming from more and more uncomfortable places. So how do you, on the phone in the industry, find and foster new growth? Well, the innovation challenges remain largely the same as they have always been. However, approaches to spotting transformational technologies rely too heavily, we believe, on traditional foresight or automated data. Companies today need to take a different approach. You need to supercharge your innovation with the right data and insights to get at the what, the who, and the when of technology innovation. Lux provides expert curation of data developed via advanced analytics, domain knowledge from tech experts like Tommy to sort the significant from the spurious, and insight on what it means and what to do about it. We are the leading provider of tech-enabled research and advisory solutions, helping our clients drive growth through technology innovation. And as a demonstration of our approach, I want to pass things off to Tommy, who's going to take us through a brief analysis on personalized nutrition and opportunities for all of you in this space. Certainly, if you have questions about Lux or what we do, ask them in the Q&A box, or you can follow up with us directly. And definitely, if you have any questions for Tommy, again, enter the same questions in that same box, and we'll do our best to get to as many of them as possible. With that, I'll pass it over to Tommy.
Thank you, Andrew, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone on the phone. So as Andrew said, I'm here today to talk to you about personalized nutrition, something I'm sure you all have at least heard of. But before really diving into today's content, I do want to level set, just make sure that we're all speaking the same language. So when I say personalized nutrition, I mean the sciences, the technologies, the products, and the services that provide consumers with individualized dietary recommendations. So very much going away from the antiquated food pyramid and moving towards this N is equal to 1 type approach. So what aspects around personalized nutrition will I be talking about today? First, I'm going to look at what's driving the need for personalized nutrition. Then I'm going to look at the gaps in enabling sensing and diagnostic technologies that are really helping fuel these personalized nutrition recommendations. Then lastly, going to explore some high potential business models that can really help translate personalized nutrition into a substantial business opportunity. So first, what's driving the need for personalized nutrition? So the need is the fact that chronic diseases like diabetes, which are largely preventable by diet, are becoming more prevalent and costly. So we see here in this figure that the prevalence has increased in every region of the world for the past 30 some odd years, which is absolutely staggering. And to add insult to injury, not only are people being more affected, not only are more people being affected by the disease, but the cost of care is increasing. Where we've seen here over a 2x jump in the cost of care premium compared to those without diabetes. So our hypothesis into why this is happening, it's because we live in a world today where you have food really serving now as a source of indulgence, which can attribute to the rise in prevalence of diseases like diabetes. And then you have drugs, which serve for disease treatment, which can attribute to the rise in cost of care. But there is a silver lining to this. There is an emerging opportunity in the middle of what you could describe here as a spectrum, where you have personalized nutrition in the form of personalized foods and personalized supplements for disease prevention. Because as I said, diseases like diabetes are largely preventable by diet. And when we think about personalized nutrition in that context, we can really start to work towards shifting the healthcare paradigm from disease treatment to disease prevention. Really go from being reactive to proactive. Now, continuing along this notion of personalized nutrition as a disease prevention tool, and really thinking about it in just kind of anchoring diabetes as a use case example, let's think about what this actually translate into as a business opportunity. So we'll just run through a quick hypothetical calculation to get a sense of that. So let's use the number of diabetics in the world as just as a proxy for the number of pre-diabetics, which is 383 million. Let's say we were to offer 30% of that population a personalized nutrition solution. And then let's say that we're able to obtain an average of a $200 customer lifetime value from each of those people. That's going to equate to a $15 billion opportunity. And you could even argue that that's a conservative estimate. And this has been largely untapped. And we see that here when actually, if we look at, once again, continuing along this use case of diabetes, if we look at recent investments, acquisitions, and partnerships related to diabetes prevention and management, so much of it is skewed towards management. And I'm not here to say that's not important. It is important, and it's serving a separate unmet need. But our thought is, wouldn't it be better to prevent the disease in the first place, both for philosophical reasons and business reasons? So hopefully I've sold you on why we need to use personalized nutrition as a disease prevention tool, and the fact that it's largely untapped opportunity. But before investing in personalized nutrition, before engaging in personalized nutrition, you have to remember that at its core, it's still a diet. And it's very important to think about it in that context, because many diets have come and gone and been dubbed the term fad diet. And one of the primary reasons that these fad diets failed is because they did not stand on credible science. So it's absolutely paramount that as we look to use personalized nutrition as a disease prevention mechanism, we have to have a firm understanding of what credible scientific tools are at our disposal and where the current gaps are. Or else personalized nutrition will not succeed as a disease prevention tool and will just become another fad diet. So when I was just talking a second ago about the scientific tools at our disposal for personalized nutrition, I was really referring to sensing and diagnostic technologies. So that's where I'm going to focus now, so that we can walk away with a clear understanding on what sensing and diagnostic tools you need to construct a successful personalized nutrition solution for disease prevention. So let's walk through what are the sensing and diagnostic tools within the toolbox that we can leverage. So first, it really starts with rudimentary data types around physical traits and lifestyle, such as physical activity, where you can get that from a simple wearable Fitbit type device. And then you're using established data trends to help fuel personalized nutrition recommendations. As we get a little bit more sophisticated, you can then start looking at biomarkers, which a lot of the time it's going to be from a blood sample where you're measuring different nutrient levels like vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. and that serves as a data source to help fuel recommendations. And then we can use our genetics, so our hereditary makeup, which that's usually obtained from a saliva sample, and then you're doing some sort of genotyping or sequencing analysis, and using that as a way to make recommendations. And then lastly, looking at our microbiome and really our gut microbiome, which you're usually getting that data from a stool sample, and then you're using some sort of metagenomic analysis approach to infer the status of the gut microbiome. And of course, in this figure can become a lot more complicated, and it's actually something we are going to look at in an upcoming report. But needless to say, these all fuel towards, or these all lead to different types of recommendations and different types of use cases within the context of personalized nutrition. And they certainly aren't mutually exclusive. So all these different sensing and diagnostic tools and data types can all lead towards healthy meal plans, recommendations for supplements, nutrition and lifestyle advice, and then even finding ways to decrease diabetes risk. But once again, going back to that disease prevention theme. But let's now look at data types through a slightly different lens, because the personalized nutrition solutions don't just vary by data type, as we plot here on the horizontal axis. They also vary by frequency of recommendations, which really speaks to how often is testing being done and how often are the recommendations being refined to the user. So this can vary from fixed, so it's just a one-time test being done and one-time set of recommendations being handed over to the consumer. Or it could be repeat. So perhaps you're doing testing on a monthly basis, and each time the recommendations are being refined. And then lastly, continuous, where you actually have a nonstop stream of data being generated, analyzed, and contextualized to provide a nonstop stream of recommendations. So let's look at, if we actually populate this framework, this figure with some logos of emerging personalized nutrition companies, you can see that it is becoming a little bit crowded. But there are some blank spots here, and that was done deliberately. And so first, two of the blank spots are really just because it's not applicable. Especially when we think about genetics, it's something that's not going to change over time. So there's no need to do continuous or even repeat testing. But there's one blank spot that I really want to dive into, and that's continuous microbiome monitoring, which is an immense product development opportunity. One, because no one's really tackled that today, and two, so before going to the second reason, so that obviously gives a opportunity to differentiate from a product and technology standpoint. But then also there's really some scientific reasons on why we should look at continuous microbiome monitoring, especially as it relates to disease prevention. So honing in on that. So first, the first reason on why we should really focus on continuous microbiome monitoring is one, that our microbiomes change throughout the day. It's dynamic. So the microbial populations within our gut are in constant flux. And then the second one, and really going back to this disease prevention theme, is that imbalances in our microbiomes are linked to disease states. And so, expanding upon that, if we think about where people fall, around the world, they all fall within somewhere along this spectrum, where you have healthy, pre-disease, or disease states. And of course, the lines between these buckets are blurred. But if we look at the people along this spectrum, if we look at healthy, fixed or repeat solutions, that's going to suffice. That's fine. But if we think about people in a pre-disease or even a disease state, this is where continuous microbiome monitoring can really be a powerful tool. Because once again, there's been an increasing amount of evidence that imbalances in our microbiome are at least correlated or even cause certain diseases. So you could actually imagine a scenario where you have a continuous microbiome monitor specifically looking at these microbes of interest that are correlated to certain disease states, and then recommend foods or supplements to help balance that microbiome. I would argue that we're not there yet, but this is certainly where I think things will go and where we should go. But now, I've talked about the gaps through the technology lens, but it's equally important, if not more important, to talk about the gaps through a business model lens. Because none of this matters if we aren't able to monetize it. So that's the conversation I want to have with all of you now. I'll go through the existing business models today, particularly for microbiome analysis, then look at a high potential business model that can really make an impact in personalized nutrition. So first, going through existing business models, and specifically for microbiome analysis, and this can really be analogous to different sensing and diagnostic business models. So first, going through, and it divides into three categories. The first one is sales of testing devices, where you're seeing companies actually earn all of their revenue solely based on a diagnostic tool or some form of a sensing and diagnostic tool, either to a consumer or a patient. So in a business-to-consumer aspect, this is where you see a company selling a device where the person within their home can use it, and then it provides nutritional recommendations based off the results. And then a diagnostic device you're seeing in an actual clinical setting. The second one, where you see a lot of the companies in today, is what we call here analysis services, which really speaks to the fact that the revenue is hinged on the data that's being generated from the microbiome analysis. So converting zeros and ones into dollar signs, or really in this case, your T's, your A's, your G's, and your C's into dollar signs. In a business-to-consumer context, the types of recommendations that can be made off the data are in the form of general health insights or actual personalized nutrition recommendations. In a business-to-business context, that data is usually in the context of identifying therapeutic targets, identifying bugs as drugs, where the revenue comes in the form of licensing arrangements or partnership agreements, or just actual testing services. And then the last one is sales of other products, where you're actually using the microbiome analysis to help drive sales of tangible products. So in a business-consumer environment, that's prebiotics, probiotics, and other supplements as well. And then for business-to-business context, it's actually identifying the bug as a drug and then actually commercializing it yourself and selling the therapeutic. Where I really want to focus on is this business-to-consumer aspect and talk about this a little bit more. Because although I've looked at revenue sources from microbiome analysis, this really is, especially this top half of this figure, is really analogous to all of personalized nutrition and how personalized nutrition companies are earning revenue. And really, you can even distill this further, where the business models today within personalized nutrition, it's all done on a single transaction basis or a recurring subscription basis. So now we've really talked about and learned the means in which these companies are generating revenue, but then the other question is, how much does it actually cost to the consumer? Because it's crucial that, once again, that in order for personalized nutrition to be successful as a disease prevention tool, it needs to be affordable and accessible. So if we look at kind of an excerpt of some of the logos that I showed in a previous figure, we can see that the minimum cost for a one-time test is all in the order of hundreds of dollars. And this is the cost to the consumer. So what can be inferred from this is that today's personalized nutrition solutions are largely accessible only to those with deep pockets. And especially a lot of these today are really geared towards people that are already kind of fit and just want to be fitter. So we have to think of ways to move the cost off the consumer to make it not just a nice to have for those types of people, but a need to have for disease prevention. So as I said, these companies are generating their revenues on a single transaction basis or recurring subscription basis. So what's another way that we can what's another business model to actually move the cost off the consumer to really unlock it as a disease prevention tool? So one way forward is value-based pricing, where value-based pricing, the revenue scheme solely hinges on result demonstration. So how effective your service is. So this is something that we have actually seen in other industries, and I'll walk through a couple of examples to hopefully solidify what value-based pricing means. And this could really be a way, because it solely hinges on result demonstration, this can be a way to move the cost off the consumer and get entities like employers and health insurers involved. So one example is Omada Health, where, once again, this is actually really on the fringes of personalized nutrition, where it's offering a digital health program for diabetes prevention, and it's solely charging its customer base, employers and health insurers, based on the percentage of weight loss by users. So once again, solely based on the effectiveness of its service. And then an example that's totally unrelated to personalized nutrition, but we can still learn a lot from, is a company called Konix, where it's offering a predictive maintenance for railway assets. Its revenue is solely based on charging railway operators on the percentage of annual savings per asset, once again, on the effectiveness of its service. And these aren't any random companies. They're companies that we've talked to, interviewed, done in-depth analyses of, and given what we call a Lux take of positive, so a highly regarded company, and they are at scale. So once again, what I really want to drive home here is that value-based pricing can really create incentive for those that bear the financial burden of care, so employers and health insurers, to adopt preventive tools like personalized nutrition. So I realize I've thrown a lot at you, just want to summarize it into 3 key takeaways. So the first being, leverage personalized nutrition as a disease prevention tool for philosophical reasons, for business reasons, and to really make personalized nutrition a need to have rather than a nice to have, so that you can help capture a double-digit billion-dollar opportunity. Then seize the only remaining white space, which is continuous microbiome analysis. Then lastly, implement value-based pricing or other high potential business models to really push towards a reimbursable system. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Andrew.
Thank you so much, Tommy. Tremendous presentation, incredibly informative. I certainly learned something, and I'm going to use the phrase bugs as drugs from now on when we're talking about this. So as a reminder, if you do have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box on the GoToMeeting webinar platform. With that, we do have a couple of questions that have come in during the course of the presentation. So Tommy, I'm going to jump right in here with a couple. So the first is, you mentioned earlier in your presentation that microbial populations in the gut are ever changing. So sort of a question here, which is, how valid or meaningful do you think today's microbiome-based personalized nutrition recommendations actually are?
Sure, and this is a question that we get asked a lot by clients. So I'll emphasize that microbiome data is absolutely paramount for long-term success in personalized nutrition, but there's a lot of steps that we need to take to actually get there. There's a lot of fundamental research that needs to be done, because there's a lot of correlation data, but not necessarily causation data. So you see a lot of these companies popping up that are providing some sort of, say, wellness score based off of your microbiome. But what does that mean? And what can you do based off that? And what if someone gets a perfect wellness score? How is that determined? I would question that. But regardless, just because we are seeing so much increasing evidence in mapping relationships between diet, microbiome, disease states, and whatnot, that it will become an integral tool for personalized nutrition.
Yeah, and I can see a lot of technology advances in the next few years that will get more specific, as you're saying, Tommy. I guess a follow-on question on the platform here is, so understanding that that's going to be a challenge, like what does that actually mean? Are there technologies that you see that will do a better job of actually enabling on the spectrum that you mentioned, the more continuous microbiome monitoring instead of one-off?
Yeah, so, and this is actually a conversation I specifically had with a client just last week. So we've talked to one company that's trying to tackle it, and that's the only one we've come across. So that's kind of the asterisk to calling it a completely open product development opportunity. So the company's called Atmo Biosciences out of Australia, and they are developing an ingestible sensor capsule that actually resides within your gut and is measuring volatile compounds that are released within your digestive tract, and then using that as an indirect way to analyze your microbiome on a continuous basis. Of course, there's some gaps in how do you actually translate just volatile gas data into what's actually going on within your gut. And then some other far out ideas that we've heard of, I've talked about with people at conferences, is actually the concept of a smart toilet, because every time we go to the bathroom, we're actually just flushing data down the drain. So you could actually see, sensors are only getting cheaper and smaller, so you could actually see that getting integrated into a toilet, and you're not asking a consumer to deviate from their normal lifestyle. So we'll see. That could be a way of the future. I realize it's not truly continuous, but it's pretty darn close.
A new subject matter for the dining room table.
Yeah, exactly.
And would you just repeat the name of the Australian company that you mentioned?
Yeah, Atmo Biosciences, ATMO Biosciences. Yeah.
Thanks, Tommy. So time for maybe one more question here. So I'm just looking at the Q&A in the chat platform here. Here's another question, and you mentioned this as sort of when you were talking about the one-off expensive costs or the ongoing subscription costs as potential business models. And you also talked about employers or healthcare providers. But do you see most personalized nutrition companies that are innovating in this space, do you think that they're going to go more direct to consumer? Or do you think that they're going to go more through their healthcare practitioners or maybe through employers?
Yeah. So most of them today are going direct to consumer. And I could see why they're doing that. They're trying to sell into kind of the convenience play, selling something right to your doorstep. But I've seen early signals where companies are transitioning to healthcare practitioners, and I think that's the way of the future for personalized nutrition, because one, it's helping build credibility of your product, of your solution, by going through a healthcare practitioner. And then also, especially as we look at using it as a disease prevention tool, those are the types of people that you want to be kind of marrying your solution with to help give the actual, bring those recommendations to life, and actually provide the consumer with the kind of the right tools to take that recommendation set and then actually make changes into their daily lives to bring about a positive outcome.
Yeah, continuous microbiome monitoring is a little bit different than a DNA test we spit into a saliva tube, which I could see being and is currently much more direct to consumer, as opposed to doing the microbiome testing, interpreting the results, and then needing some recommendations from your healthcare practitioner. Okay, that's really all the time we have. Thank you again, Tommy, for a wonderful presentation and for answering some of those participant questions. While we weren't able to get to all of the questions, we do appreciate you submitting them. If you did submit one or still want to, email us directly. You can still enter them onto the platform, and we will get back to you as follow-up. We will be sending out the presentation, the slides, and a recording to everyone who attended. If you'd like to engage with us in ongoing conversation, you can also follow us on our LinkedIn and Twitter handles, which is @Lux Research. And we post a lot of thought leadership and ongoing information and insights there. And finally, stay tuned for our blog platform, which we will be launching in September, where we will also look to continue this very fascinating conversation. So thank you, everybody, for your attention. Thanks again to our presenter, Tommy, and have a great day, everyone.